All right, guys, we're going to knock out this FDR review just real quick. Okay. All right, so make sure you answer the questions as we go through it. Okay. Make sure you're really paying attention. Okay. Just make sure you get as much out of this video as possible to prepare for your test. Okay. So remember FDR, and then we're covering everything with this. So Great Depression all the way through World War II. Okay. So make sure you remember these Great Depression causes. So we know the farmers are overproducing, okay, which makes prices go low, have all this excess food that nobody's buying, so the farmers go down. Then you have the stock market crash, right? Black Tuesday. Um, and that comes through this thing called speculating and buying stock on the margin, and all of these things that fed into what the Great Depression becomes. Right. Then you have the Smoot-Hawley tariff, which we know was one of Hoover's approaches to end the Depression, right? Which you understand that it just made world trade stop, right? It increased tariffs so much to where now there's no world trade, and it just began to make worse things even more worse, right? On top of the sick industries we have, people are using credit, okay, not really thinking about, okay, paying this money back, right? They're just kind of going and pretending like it's never going to be impacting them. And then we have these relaxed government policies in the 20s, right? We had gone back way back to laissez-faire, and we'd allowed the country to essentially run itself, right? And that's kind of coming back to hurt us. Remember Hoover's approach to this was rugged individualism, where he really wasn't doing a whole lot. Okay? He was really letting charities and small businesses kind of take up the brunt of trying to figure out how to better the depression, and it clearly was not working out the way he had hoped. And so this brings us into the election of 1932. Okay, Herbert Hoover versus Franklin D. Roosevelt. Okay, and there's your rugged individualism, relied on charities and private businesses, right, to fix the depression. Whereas FDR comes in and says, "Hey, we're going to start this thing called the New Deal. Happy days are here again." All right, very, very, very much more hands-on approach with dealing with the Great Depression than Herbert Hoover was. All right, so take a second, answer question number one. Now, I remember with the New Deal, the three R's, right? These are the basic goals of the New Deal, right? Relief, recovery, reform. Okay, relief is the immediate relief. We're providing jobs for the unemployed. Right? Recovery was all about priming the pump, getting things ready for true permanent reform to come. And then the reform is the permanent programs to make sure we never go back into a Great Depression again. Okay, so make sure you know the three R's, right? And how they played a role in the New Deal. I know FDR's brain trust. Remember, that's his cabinet, right? He surrounds himself with who he believes are the most intellectual and intelligent people across the country. Okay. And remember, there one lady, okay, that he adds to his cabinet, right? The first lady ever to be in a presidential cabinet, Frances Perkins. And then remember the 20th Amendment. Okay, moved Inauguration Day back up to January 20th. Hoover was a lame duck. They wanted to get FDR into office as soon as possible. And so they said, instead of waiting until March, let's go ahead and do this. Okay, and so we move up the inauguration date to January 20th to get FDR into office as soon as possible. And then one more thing there, you see the fireside chats, which is what you see happening right here with FDR. I remember these are essentially his radio show, okay, where he would get on periodically and just update the nation. Okay, tell them, hey, this is what's happening. This is what we're doing. Okay, this is why we're doing it, and this is how the country is going. Okay, but it gained a lot of support for Hoover, right? It allowed him to go into the homes of the American people, and the American people responded really, really well to it. Then remember his first 100 days. This is really where the New Deal kicks off. Okay, he starts with the bank holiday. He closes all of the banks, right, as a way for them to breathe, right? Try to figure out this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. Then he throws in the Emergency Banking Act, okay, that said only safe, financially sound banks would reopen, right? Because if we just let all these other banks open up, right, the depression would just continue to worsen. And so after this, right, we start to see faith in banks reemerge. People aren't going and pulling all of their money out, right? And they're able to kind of get back to what they were doing. Right. And then from there, you have all of the alphabet agencies that come out, right? The FDIC, the CCC, SEC, TBA, AAA, right? Social Security, right? Make sure you know, especially those seven, right, that you had to know for your quiz. Okay. All right, but especially the ones that you see here. And then with Social Security, know that it impacted retired, unemployed, and disabled, all of these people who could not work. All right, got benefits of the Social Security Act. All right, so take a second and answer question number two. Now, not everybody loved the New Deal, right? And we know this, okay? A lot of people said it violated checks and balances and gave the power to the president much more than what he should have. It limited free enterprise, meaning that businesses couldn't do what they wanted to do. Remember, we're going away from that laissez-faire aspect, okay, where the government's taking a much more hands-on approach to how businesses roll. Right, and then expanded the role of the government, right? The government took on a lot more control, right? The government took on a lot more reach than we had really ever seen with the New Deal. Okay? And a lot of people didn't like it, even some calling it unconstitutional, right? And then to know, remember to do this New Deal initially, right? We went into deficit spending, right? So this Keynesian economic type mentality of you had to spend money to make money, right? And a lot of people were questioning that. They're like, we're already in depression. Now we're going to go even deeper into debt to try to pay for this New Deal. A lot of people weren't on board with it. Also, remember FDR and labor, you get the Wagner Act. This allowed unions to do just what they do, and that is unionize. Okay. Right. And so now we legitimize labor unions again, allow workers to fight for better treatment, better pay, better conditions. All right. And then we get the Fair Labor Standards Act that gives us the no child labor minimum wage and a 44-hour work week, right? Starts to put some standards into labor, right? Telling employers what they can and cannot force their employees to do. I remember African Americans under FDR, right? We see them change to go with the Democratic Party away from the Republican Party in 1936, right? And this was greatly due to what FDR was doing. They saw that he was finally supporting them. But also remember with what Eleanor Roosevelt was doing. Okay, FDR's wife fought very hard to end racial discrimination. Okay, and she will for many, 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 many years. All right, so take a second and answer question number 3. Right. And now then remember in the midst of all this stuff happening with the Great Depression under FDR, we go into the Dust Bowl. And so remember a lot of people migrated to California to escape it.